Hello students, this video recording is about what makes a good summary. If you want, you should take out your summary response essay packet and turn to page 6 where the model summary response essay starts, because I'll be referring to that. And you may also want to look at Allen and Bacon page 101, because toward the end of this video I'm going to refer you there for a little exercise. Okay, so you know the basics of what this assignment is, and one of the things that it's requiring you to do is write a complete summary of the article Against School by John Taylor Gatto. So we need to talk about what makes a good summary. And so we're going to break it down by a few different criteria. First thing to understand is that a good summary proves your comprehension, meaning it shows that you understand what the article is, what it's saying. It also shows, it proves your comprehension, but it also shows, proves that you can differentiate between major ideas and minor ideas. So in any piece of writing, the author always has main ideas that he's trying to prove, and he has minor supporting details that help prove that. For example, once you get to know the Gatto article a little bit better, you'll understand that one of Gatto's major ideas is that we don't need school to have an education. That's his big point that he wants to prove. He proves that with many different minor ideas. For example, he does things like lists off former presidents and other famous people who did not go through school but were still educated. He also references the success of homeschoolers. So a good summary is able to show what are the major ideas, and then a good summary generally leaves out most of the minor ideas, because what you're trying to do with a summary is take a big piece of writing and shrink it down significantly. So that being said, there are 4 basic criteria for a good summary. A good summary is accurate. A good summary is complete. A good summary is concise. And a good summary is objective. So let's talk about these one by one. A good summary is accurate when it represents the article correctly, meaning you don't say the author said X when in fact he said Y. So writing an accurate summary can be difficult, especially when you're working with a college level text, because you might think you understand what the author's saying when in fact you don't. The best cure for inaccuracy is to read the article as much as possible, to use as many expert reading strategies as you can, and to recognize what you don't understand and look it up in a dictionary, on Google, wherever. Another great way to ensure accuracy is to talk about the article with other people who have read it. Okay, so a good summary is also complete. What does this mean? This means that it covers the entire article from beginning to end. So you can't leave important parts out. You should, when you're sitting down to summarize an article, you should start with the introduction and end with the conclusion, and try to include all of the major ideas in the middle, and you'll have a complete article. Gatto's essay is 6 pages long. Your summary should take into account everything he says on all 6 pages. Concise. A good summary needs to be concise. You guys have an objective guideline for your assignment, which is your summary should be less, or it should be 250 words or less. Ideally, you try to use as many of those 250 words as possible, because if you only write a 25-word summary, you've probably left a lot out. So try to think of getting yourself as close to 250 as possible without going over. The other thing that is important when you're writing a concise summary is that you avoid wordiness, meaning you avoid using more words than are necessary to get your point across, and avoid repeating yourself, or redundancy. So you don't need to mention the same detail twice within your summary. You try to keep it as concise, as brief as possible. Okay, the last criteria, a good summary is objective. In this sense, when we say objective, we mean unbiased. So a good summary is about the article that you're reading. It's not about your own ideas or your own interpretations. So a objective summary focuses only on the author's ideas, not your own. When it comes to writing the essay, you have your entire response to say what you feel about Gatto's argument and how you interpret it and how it meshes or doesn't mesh with your own experiences. But for the summary, the concise 250-word paragraph, you are focused just on Gatto's ideas. So those are the typical criteria, or those are the major criteria for a good summary. Now I want to talk about some of the typical elements of a summary, or the conventions of a summary. And these are just things that will generally appear in most summaries that you read, and they should appear in summaries that you write. So I'll give these examples, or I'll give these elements, and then I'll show you what they look like in our model essay from the packet. Okay, so first, you generally start a summary. Your first sentence of summary gives a broad overview, or gives the thesis of the article. So what is the main point that the author's trying to say here? So if we look over at the model essay, remember the first paragraph is just an introduction, so we won't look at that now. We're looking at this model summary here. The first sentence says, Kinsley encourages the reader to think it through instead of labeling stem cell research as controversial, stating that either you think a microscopic embryo has the same human rights as you and I, or you don't. So here, the summary writer is trying to capture the big idea of the entire article. What is the author's main point here? So you usually start your summary with that so that your readers know what all the other details pertain to. Okay, another typical element of a good summary is that it uses frequent attributive tags. This is probably a new word for a lot of you. Attributive tag is simply, if you think of attributive, attribute, or attribution, it means that you're giving credit for something. So, maybe you go to work and you bring your little bagged lunch, and to make sure that no one else eats your bagged lunch, you put a little post-it note on there that has your name. You are attributing the lunch to yourself. So attributive tags in writing are statements like these. First, Kinsley informs. Kinsley describes. Kinsley explains that preventing. So it's when you use the author's name, or sometimes a pronoun like he, or if you just say the author states. So an attributive tag is when you remind the readers where this information is coming from. A good summary, as you can see, uses a lot of attributive tags. I'll highlight many of them right now. These are ways that the reader can be reminded that all the ideas here in the summary belong to Kinsley. They do not belong to the person who is doing the summarizing. Okay, and another typical element of a effective summary is that it uses obvious transitions, explicit transitions in order to remind the reader, or in order to help the reader see the basic structure of the article. So if we look back to the model essay, we can see with all of these attributive tags and the statement that leads into the summary, we are breaking the article apart. He then addresses 3 main points. First, that is a transition. Second, that is a transition. Finally, that is a transition. Kinsley concludes, right? That is a transition. So explicit transitions are words like first, second, finally, or words like in addition, moreover, however. Explicit transitions help the readers understand the relationship between ideas, and in this case, the summary writer has used transitions in order to break the article down into its major sections. Okay, another typical element of a good summary, the last one that we're going to talk about, is that quotations are generally brief and always include a page number. So, when we say quotations, we mean exact words from the original article. Generally, a summary is going to be in your own words. You show that you understand it by writing it in your own words. But at times, you use quotations in order to capture the essence of what the author was saying, or if his words were particularly powerful, that sort of thing. So usually, you keep your quotes pretty brief. Here's 3 words, here's a 4-word one. When they are a little bit longer, it's because the language is so particular that it'd be hard to change without losing the author's point. So generally you keep your quotes brief. Most of the summary should be in your own words, and whenever you have a quotation, a direct quotation, exact words from the author, you always indicate the page that it came from, right? So you want to make sure to do that. Okay, so those are the typical elements of a summary. We talked also about what makes a summary good. What are the criteria of a good summary? You want to try to include all of this information in your own summary. Now, what you should do is spend, I would say, about 10 or 15 minutes completing an exercise that appears on Allen and Bacon, page 101, and it goes on, ends at 103. It's called Determining What is a Good Summary. And in this little exercise, which you can use just to think about and recognize good summaries and bad summaries, they offer you 3 different summaries of the same article. The first one is an excellent summary. That's what Allen and Bacon say about it. You can trust them. So it'll probably contain all of these elements and all of these criteria that we talked about. And then the second 2 that appear on the next page are not so good summaries. They have 1 or more problems when it comes to these criteria, or when it comes to these typical elements. So you should spend 10 or 15 minutes working through that exercise and trying to recognize what are all of the things wrong with Summary 2 and Summary 3. And this will conclude our tutorial on what makes a good summary.